In the summer of 1965, a man named Robert Restall climbed down into a shaft on a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia and never came back up alive. His son went down after him. Then 2 workers went down to help. All 4 died within minutes of each other at the bottom of the same hole. The official cause of death was hydrogen sulfide poisoning from gases trapped underground. The unofficial cause of death, the one that the island's history makes it almost impossible to ignore, was the same thing that has killed or ruined everyone who has ever gone looking for what is buried there: the hole itself. Oak Island is 57 acres of forested land sitting in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. It has no strategic value. It has no natural resources worth mentioning. It is, by any reasonable measure, an unremarkable piece of real estate in a part of the world full of unremarkable islands. And yet, for 230 years, it has consumed the obsessions, the fortunes, and in 6 documented cases, the lives of people trying to reach its bottom. The question that has never been answered, not by engineers, not by archaeologists, not by historians, not by the dozens of excavation companies that have attacked the island with industrial equipment, is simple. What is down there? And the second question, the one that the official record makes even harder to answer, who built it, and how did they make it almost impossible to reach? To understand Oak Island, you have to understand what the money pit actually is, not the legend of it, the physical structure. In 1795, a teenager named Daniel McGinnis rowed out to Oak Island and found a circular depression in the ground, roughly 13 feet across. Above the depression, on a branch of a large oak tree, hung what appeared to be an old tackle block, the kind used to lower heavy loads. McGinnis came back with 2 friends. They started digging. At 10 feet down, they hit a platform of oak logs. They dug through it. At 20 feet, another platform. At 30, another. Evenly spaced platforms of old timber, each one sealed with a layer of putty and coconut fiber. Coconut fiber. On an island in Nova Scotia, where coconuts do not grow and have never grown, and where the nearest source of coconut material is roughly 2,000 miles south in the Caribbean. They stopped at 30 feet, went home, and came back with better equipment and more men. They dug to 90 feet. At 90 feet, they found a large flat stone with symbols carved into it, a cipher. The stone was removed, and the inscription was eventually translated, or claimed to be translated, as reading, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Whether that translation is accurate, whether the stone ever said any such thing, is one of the smaller mysteries of Oak Island, because what happened next was considerably more dramatic. Overnight, the pit flooded. Not gradually, not from rain. The entire shaft filled with seawater to within 33 feet of the surface and stayed there. Pumping the water out made no difference. It came back. The pit was connected to the ocean by a system of drainage tunnels, and those tunnels had been engineered so precisely that the flood trap activated automatically when the excavation reached a certain depth. Someone had built an anti-excavation device into a hole in the ground, and they had built it well enough that it was still functioning after at least a century of being underground. This is the detail that separates Oak Island from ordinary treasure legends. Treasure legends are stories. This is engineering. Somebody actually built something here. The flood tunnels are real. The timber platforms are real. The coconut fiber is real. It has been carbon dated to somewhere between 1200 and 1400 CE, which predates European exploration of that coastline by at least a century. Whatever is here was placed here by someone with significant resources, significant engineering capability, and a very specific intention to prevent anyone from reaching it. The question of who built it has generated more theories than almost any unsolved mystery in North American history. The list of proposed architects reads like a survey of Western civilization's most interesting secrets. Francis Drake, who raided Spanish treasure fleets in the Caribbean in the 1570s and needed somewhere to hide the proceeds. Captain William Kidd, the privateer-turned-pirate who was hanged in London in 1701 and reportedly told his interrogators that he had buried a fortune worth £40,000 somewhere in the Atlantic. The Knights Templar, who allegedly fled Europe with the treasures of the medieval church and needed a final hiding place. Spanish treasure ships from the wreck-strewn Florida coast. The original pirate republic of Nassau. Marie Antoinette's jewels, supposedly smuggled out of France before the Revolution. Each of these theories has advocates. Each has evidence, thin in most cases, but real in some. The Templar theory, which sounds least plausible, has the uncomfortable support of stone carvings found on the island that bear Templar-associated symbols. The Spanish theory has the support of the coconut fiber. Coconut husks were used as packing material on Spanish ships, and the engineering, which is consistent with Spanish mining techniques from the colonial period. The Kidd theory has the support of a hand-drawn map that surfaced in England in the 1930s, purportedly by Kidd himself, showing an island that matches Oak Island's geography with the notation, "The secret is where the money is." None of these theories has been proven. None has been definitively disproven either. What has been proven, or at least demonstrated beyond reasonable argument, is that the engineering of the money pit represents a level of planning and resource that was not casually undertaken. The flood tunnel system consists of at least two separate channels running from the ocean to the pit. One enters from Smith's Cove on the east side of the island, another from the south shore. They were not natural formations. They were constructed with clay and stone linings, designed to funnel seawater into the pit at a precise depth. The construction of those tunnels, at that time, with the technology of whatever era they were built, would have required a coordinated workforce of significant size, working in secret for an extended period. This raises a question that the treasure hunters have always had difficulty answering. How do you hide that kind of work? You cannot dig two ocean-to-pit tunnel systems in secret with 50 workers unless everyone who knows about it either takes the secret to their grave or never returns from the island. And here is where the island's history takes on a quality that is genuinely difficult to explain by coincidence alone. Every major excavation of Oak Island has ended in disaster, disproportionate to the statistical likelihood of that disaster. The first serious excavation company, the Onslow Company, in 1803, reached 93 feet and triggered the flood and abandoned the project. The Truro Company, in 1849, drilled down through the flood and retrieved from the drill tip fragments of gold chain, wood, and what appeared to be parchment. They never recovered the source of those fragments. Their pumping equipment caught fire, and the project collapsed. The Oak Island Association in the 1860s dug a parallel shaft to try to bypass the flood tunnels. The shaft flooded when it intersected the original pit, and a worker was scalded to death by steam from a malfunctioning pump. Franklin Roosevelt, who would become the 32nd President of the United States, was part of a syndicate that excavated Oak Island in 1909. He visited the site, invested money, and corresponded about the project for the rest of his life. His syndicate found nothing and withdrew. The 4 deaths in 1965 were not the only ones. A worker named Maynard Kaiser fell from a pump hoist in 1897 and died. A man named Hedden, who led an excavation in the 1930s, lost his entire fortune in the project and died before he could resume. The insurance industry, by the 1960s, had begun treating Oak Island as an uninsurable liability. In 1965, immediately after the 4 deaths in the flooded shaft, the Nova Scotia government passed legislation requiring all future excavations to be licensed. The licensing requirement was partly about safety. It was also, some historians of the island have noted, a quiet acknowledgement by the government that something down there kept killing people, and the province had a responsibility to acknowledge that whatever it was real. The current excavation is the most technologically advanced in the island's history. The Lagina brothers, Rick and Marty, began their work in 2006 and have deployed ground-penetrating radar, underwater cameras, core drilling technology, and a full archaeological team. Their work has been documented in a television series that has run for over a decade and has produced results that are genuinely significant. In 2017, a lid cross was recovered from the island. That analysis dated to between 1200 and 1600 CE. In 2018, a large void was detected at approximately 90 feet depth in an area never previously excavated, measuring roughly 27 meters long and 8 meters wide. In 2021, a Spanish copper coin dated 1598 was found in an area of the island away from the main pit. Each find is significant. None is conclusive. The void at 90 feet has not been accessed. The Lagina excavation, for all its technology, has not reached whatever triggered the flood tunnels for 230 years of predecessors. The paranormal dimension of Oak Island is not separate from its factual dimension. It is embedded in it. The island has a documented history in Mi'kmaq oral tradition as a place of warning, a location the indigenous people of Nova Scotia avoided and advised others to avoid before any European ever set foot on it. The specific nature of that warning has not been recorded in any academic source, which is itself a historical anomaly. Indigenous oral traditions in the Nova Scotia region are relatively well documented by the 19th century. The absence of a specific Oak Island warning in that record, given the island's later prominence, is the kind of gap that is more easily explained by deliberate omission than by accident. There is also the question of the triangle stones. On the south beach of Oak Island, a series of large stones was arranged in a deliberate geometric pattern, a series of triangles and lines that some researchers have interpreted as a directional marker pointing toward the pit. The stones were partially disturbed in the 20th century before their significance was recognized. What remained was surveyed and found to align with the summer solstice sunrise. Whether this is meaningful or coincidental is at this point impossible to determine. What is not impossible to determine is the cumulative weight of 230 years of evidence. Something is down there. The engineering proves it. The coconut fiber, carbon-dated centuries before European contact, proves it was placed by someone with access to tropical materials and advanced flood engineering. The gold chain fragments pulled up on drill cores in 1849 prove it contains at least some metallic objects. The scale of the flood tunnel system proves that whoever placed it there went to extraordinary lengths
to prevent its recovery. 6 people are dead. $2 billion in modern equivalent has been spent. 30 major excavations have failed. The United States President obsessed over it. The government of Nova Scotia passed laws about it. And the void at 90 feet is still there, still unmapped, still waiting. The most unsettling thing about Oak Island is not the deaths, though the deaths are unsettling. It is not the engineering, though the engineering is extraordinary. It is the persistence of the mystery across 2 centuries of increasingly advanced technology. Every generation has arrived with better tools than the last. Steam pumps replaced hand pumps. Electric drills replaced hand drills. Ground-penetrating radar replaced guesswork. And the island has absorbed every advance and given nothing conclusive back. Whatever was buried on Oak Island was buried by someone who understood something that every excavator since 1795 has had to learn the hard way. The thing is not just hidden, it is protected. And the protection was designed to outlast any technology available to the people who would come looking. That is not the behavior of someone who buried treasure carelessly. That is the behavior of someone who buried something they considered irreplaceable, by methods so sophisticated that 2 centuries of engineering have not overcome them, in a location so remote that it took a teenager stumbling on a depression in the ground to find the entrance. The depression, by the way, is still there, slightly different in shape after 230 years of excavation, but there. Robert Restall climbed into it in 1965 and never came back up. His son followed him. 2 men followed his son. The gases that killed them were natural. Hydrogen sulfide accumulating in an enclosed underground space. The engineers who investigated afterward found nothing supernatural about the mechanism of their deaths. But they also found no explanation for why, after 230 years of people going down into that hole, the thing everyone has been looking for is still at the bottom of it. Oak Island does not give up its dead, and it has not yet given up its secret. Whatever is down there has been waiting for 230 years. It is, apparently, prepared to wait longer. The hole is still open. The void is still unmapped. And somewhere in the archives of the Nova Scotia government, there is a licensing file for an excavation that has been running for nearly 20 years without finding what it is looking for. The file is still active,